May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be pleasing to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. So this week is going to be a little different. We're going to have a 3-part sermon. I'm going to do the first part, and then you're going to hear from Erica Berg, and then you're going to hear from Chad. And I'll explain that a little bit more toward the end of my short part of the sermon. So what has always really moved me about the Christian story is this story that is at the heart of the Bible and at the heart of our faith, that God so longs for us, that God so loves us, that God will pursue us no matter what, that God seeks to be with us no matter what. In fact, so much so that God chose to come and be born through a human birth, to live a human life. The joys and sufferings of humans were God's, and died a human death, going even to the cross to bear not just one person's sufferings, but the sufferings of the entire world. The sorrows, the injustice, the sin of the entire world on his very body, in his very being. And this story today is remarkable to me because even in his resurrection, this God who could have chosen to be aloof, this God who could have chosen glory and power and invulnerability, chooses to retain the wounds of his human self on his risen body. Even in resurrection, Jesus continues in his solidarity with us in our woundedness. Jesus continues to bear the wounds of our suffering on his body and to be with us in those spaces of suffering and woundedness. As believers, as followers of Christ, we are to follow Jesus into those spaces of woundedness in our own world, into those spaces of suffering and injustice and sorrow and sin. And we find that just like Thomas, when we touch those wounds, Christ is there. When we touch those wounds, we meet God. In our reading from the Hebrew Bible, we get the beginnings of the ethics that will shape so much of Jewish and Christian belief and life. We are called to justice, to kindness, to love, and so many different sorts of people are mentioned. We are called to treat with fairness and justice the disabled, the poor, our neighbors, our kin, and the immigrant. We are called to love our neighbors as ourselves. And this is an ethic that we know is carried into the New Testament when Jesus tells the story of the Good Samaritan and reminds us that who is our neighbor? It's anyone who is in need. And it is especially, perhaps, that person who you might consider an outcast, who you might consider not a part of your circle. And then we get this remarkable call that if your neighbor is in danger, you are not to stand idly by. You are to do something about it. I love that line. Our neighbor's fate, it is meant to be our fate as well, and we are meant to care and enter into those spaces. This ethic of loving the immigrant as ourself is also carried into the New Testament as Jesus in Matthew calls us to welcome the stranger and says that what you do to the least of these, you do to me. Immigration is a space of deep woundedness in our psyche and in our world right now. We are called as Christians to care not only about the dignity and humanity of the immigrant and of our neighbor, but to love them as ourselves. We are called to enter into that space of woundedness with our bodies, with our voices, to be in that space and to care about the fate of our neighbor as we care about our own fates. There are a couple of small ways we do this at LCM, and I know so many of you do this in your own lives in lots of other ways. For years, we have supported immigrant and refugee children in local elementary schools, which is a ministry that has gone kind of quietly behind the scenes and sometimes comes out into the front, and you may not know a lot about. So Erica Berg is going to tell us, I think you said since 2018, we're not quite there yet, though. We've been supporting these immigrant and refugee families. Another way that we have started doing that is to enter into a more in-depth relationship with one refugee family from Syria. And our refugee fund has been able to support them, and will probably be able to support other refugee families in ways that our Foothills ministry cannot quite handle. Just because their needs are bigger as they are being welcomed to the U.S. So you're going to hear from Chad Corman after Erica speaks about the refugee experience and about what Lutheran Family Services does. So I want to invite Erica up now, and then after Erica, Chad can come up and speak.
All right, I'm not sure if you all know this or not, but I actually have the best job in the world. I get to meet, interact with, teach, and befriend refugees and immigrants right here in the Green Mountain community. So if we rewind to 2018, when I started working at Green Mountain Elementary as a CLDE teacher, culturally and linguistically diverse education. It's a mouthful, especially for people learning English, but hey. I had students back then from Chile, Afghanistan, Africa, Nicaragua, and Honduras. I couldn't believe there were so many cultures represented in my small school in the middle of the Green Mountain community. The tapestry of cultures, languages, and friendships truly enriched my life. During COVID, it was a very tough time for many of our refugee and immigrant neighbors. Many of the families I worked with did not have cars and limited resources for transportation. LCM, our little faith family, was able to support families with over $20,000 in grocery gift cards during this difficult time. Look around, there's not that many people here, and back then there were even fewer. To think that our church prioritized the needs of so many families and found a way to truly support them is incredibly impressive. That's what we did together. Beyond the grocery cards, we partnered with another local church and other agencies to provide weekly deliveries for the families. Each week, items would be delivered to my house. I had my whole garage was just stacked with stuff. And I would load them in my car, organized them in different sections, and then I would drive to the apartments and text the families, and they would all come out to greet me. I remember one family taking only 3 rolls of toilet paper. "That's not going to last very long for 8 of you," I replied, and the mother just smiled shyly. She didn't want to be greedy, and she knew many of her neighbors were also in dire need of toilet paper. Even though the parents were worried about having enough food to feed their children and what would happen if they contracted COVID, they were always incredibly grateful, happy, and hopeful. It was the highlight of my week every time I got to go deliver the generous donations and feel the love and hope from so many. Through this time, I saw that God was already at work in our neighborhoods, and we were called to join in. One particular little girl really touched my heart, and her name is Grace. She started as a 3rd grader, and she had a magnetic personality that is so full of life and love you couldn't help but be sucked into her orbit. She spoke several languages and was the youngest in a large family that had recently fled from Africa. She had older siblings in high school and one brother in middle school. Her parents were educated in Africa and struggled to find work in America, mostly because of the language barrier. Once her siblings picked up more English, they all started getting jobs to help pay the rent and the bills. Her parents eventually found work as well. It was so hard for them to do so many things that we take for granted. Without a car and without a steady income, life here is not easy. Even things like registering for school or getting low-income internet access is extremely difficult when you don't read in English or understand the systems that are in place here. I remember Grace being so excited when they got a car and one of her siblings got his driver's license. This was no easy feat, and the whole family celebrated. On July 1st, 2022, I got a text from Grace's sister Alice saying it was just too expensive to live in Lakewood, and her family would be moving out of the state to Indiana. She specifically wanted to thank LCM, Kathy Bakke, and myself for the support and love, especially during COVID. She said she didn't know if they would have survived without our generosity and support. Alice stayed back because she was in school. Last April, Kathy and I got invitations to Alice's graduation from the CU College of Nursing, as well as an invitation to her wedding. This young woman had taken extra English classes in order to enroll in college. She kept going to school when her family moved away. She had to find roommates and commute downtown, and she persevered. To think that we all had a hand in that gives me goosebumps. Grace's family taught me what faith looks like in real time, what it means to press on, to be grateful, to lean on community, and to trust God for your next step. Currently, I'm at Foothills Elementary, just down Alameda. I have 52 students on my current roster from Syria, Venezuela, Colombia, Afghanistan, Palestine, and Mexico. And just last week, I had a new student enroll from China. She's adorable. The stories these families share about their journeys here are incredible. One mother spoke of crossing a river when they escaped Syria and fled to Jordan to a refugee camp. She said they almost drowned in the river. Another mother came with her family from Venezuela on bus, foot, and by the generosity of strangers. This woman had one leg amputated and made this journey on crutches with her husband and 3 children. Imagine coming to a new country with little more than the clothes on your back. Most of the families I work with rely on friends and neighbors to learn how to best navigate life in the U.S. There are so many things we take for granted that are so much harder when you don't speak English, are unsure of the systems, and don't have a steady income. Through the Foothills Elementary Refugee and Immigrant Assist Ministry, LCM has been making a difference in the lives of so many families for years, right in this community. In addition to supporting the work of the ministry, we can all do some simple things to make a difference. Pray for immigrant families. Look for ways to connect with newcomers in your neighborhood or workplace. Support local ministries and schools serving refugee communities. Be open, be kind, be present. Our faith comes alive when we love the stranger, when we open our hearts to the outsider, when we let God use our ordinary lives to make an extraordinary difference.
Good morning. My name is Chad Corman, and I'm coming from Lutheran Family Services from our Refugee and Asylum program. And I want to kind of give a little bit of a background of why do people from all of these countries end up in our neighborhoods anyway. So think for a moment, what would it take for you to move, not just into a new home or a new city or a new state, but to leave everything you know, everything that is comfortable, familiar, precious to you, and walk away from it all? What would it take? Sometimes we hear messages about influx of people coming into our country, and the picture is often painted that they're coming because, they want better lives. And that's true. But it's a very different reason. Most often, the people that fit into the refugee category are forcibly displaced. They're not leaving because they want better education for their kids, they want more money, they want a better future, so much as if they don't leave home, they will not survive. Conflict, violence, war, natural disaster, plaguing the world all around us. In our own nation, you think about what has happened with the fires on the East Coast most recently and the flooding, the fires in California. People can't stay home. But then you add ethnic cleansing, ethnic violence, gender-based violence, and continue to add these things up. People are fleeing for their lives. What happens is they usually will cross an international border. So initially, they'll leave, and let's say disaster strikes Denver and we all move to Pueblo. And the conditions in Pueblo are so challenging because we can't get work, our kids can't get into schools. The people of Pueblo do not like people from Denver, so we are discriminated against. And eventually, we have to leave and cross an international border. So the first step would be to be internally displaced in your own country, waiting to return home, then to cross an international border seeking protection and safety and provision, often in the form of United Nations, where the United Nations would provide a legal covering for them to be there. Unfortunately, most people never move beyond this. They will remain in another nation for decades. We regularly have families that have spent more than 20 years in refugee camps waiting for the opportunity to begin a new life in another place. This family who crossed from Syria into Jordan would be an example of this, where Syria, the civil war did not abate, it did not end, and so crossing to a neighboring nation, and yet Jordan may not be hospitable and welcoming of Syrians. Of those who begin the process of these decades-long wait, they are going to be vetted, they are going to be interviewed, they're going to be, their stories are going to be collaborated to determine, has persecution been so intense, has violence been so difficult that you could begin a new life in another place? And if so, we're going to make sure that's the case, but then we're going to partner with another nation like the U.S. We're going to give you the opportunity to begin a new life. But 99.6% will never get that opportunity. That means 1 out of every 2,000 people will get a chance to be resettled. But for that one, as a resettlement agency, we get to receive them. When a family comes to us, having waited these decades and fleeing these absolute horrific situations, they are excited to begin a new life in America. Think about what we portray to the world as who we are. We are the land of big everything, big homes, big vehicles, big opportunity. One of our clients described us, she said, when we thought of America, we thought people swam in money. And it was such a beautiful picture of just the abundance of resources available. She said, I had no idea how hard it would be, that you have to work every moment just to survive. As a resettlement agency, we are the first people to receive them at the airport. We welcome them at the gate, and we give them wraparound services that include so many things, from helping them get enrolled into school, helping them find safe, affordable housing, which in the metro area is very challenging. We help connect them to the federal benefits that they're legally eligible for, and all refugees have gone through a legal process that allows them to be here and to benefit from things like supplemental food assistance, food stamps, or a short-term provision of rent for the first couple of months. So we get them a house, we get the kids connected to school, we connect them to English classes, we help them connect to federal benefits, we get them warm clothes and some groceries, and then we just let them figure it out themselves. No, that would not be kind. So much of what we do is exactly what Erica was saying, of just journeying alongside and helping them navigate systems. Have you ever traveled to a foreign country and bought groceries in maybe an open market? Imagine the shock of going from walking down the street to the local food seller, vegetable seller, to then walking into Walmart, King Super, Safeway. It can be really overwhelming. So we help them navigate. How do you go through grocery stores and buy groceries? How do you use public transportation? How do you find a job? Put together a resume? And what we find is those who, Colorado State actually did a study that found the number one predictor of success for integration is relationship with someone who arrived before. And believe it or not, the U.S. is a nation of immigrants. We all came from somewhere else at one point in time, our relatives in history. And those who've come and figured it out, our willingness to extend that to others and journey with them makes all the difference in the world. My role at Lutheran Family Services is to mobilize the community to say, would you come, welcome, befriend, and assist refugees? Would you come alongside and do the very things? I mean, what an incredible story and presentation of just, can we share food? Can we go to the park? Can I introduce you to the library? Let's go to the zoo together. Let's go play in the snow. How can I help you find someone who can assist you with your taxes? Practical things that we can do as a neighbor. After service, we are going to be having a volunteer training program to introduce you all to practical ways to come alongside families. I know you're doing it already. You're doing it in the schools. Your generosity is so beautiful. And if you want to learn more, come. We're going to do an overview of why people are displaced and then the very practical things that people can do. I want to end with a quick story. Someone who really impacted me, a young lady who came to work, and when she arrived, her passport was taken. Her cell phone was taken, and she was essentially put into a room with a bed and was told that she would work 18 hours a day, providing housekeeping services and childcare for a family. For 3 months, she lived off of rice and a little bit more, very little. Was not allowed to leave the house. For 3 months, was not allowed to leave the house. Was confined to her room when she was not working, and she ran away. When she came to the group that I was working with, she just wanted to call home and let her kids know she was okay, because she had not talked to her children for months. She came under the premise of work, and she was enslaved. This was probably the first someone in a difficult, dangerous, vulnerable situation that I got to work with and journeying alongside to figure out, how do we get you a new passport? How do we get you connected to services for counseling and trauma care? How do we help remind you of your dignity and value as a daughter of God, made in the image of God? 6 years we journeyed with her, and at the 6th year, she was able to return to her home country. And when she got there, she was a grandmother. Her daughter had given birth during her time away, and she sent us a family picture of her children and her grandchildren and said, "Thank you for treating me like a human. Thank you for caring about me as a person. Thanks for helping me get home to my family." She got to go home. There are a lot of people in these situations who haven't been home yet. We can welcome them to home here. We can help them establish new lives, put down roots here, and find new family, even in the kingdom of God. Thank you. Please join us after. If you haven't thought about it, join us after.